Back into the days, we had the French symphonic black metal band Penumbra, and now in 2023 we have the Romanian Blackish dark metal band Antumbra. If Penumbra from France used to play some sort of a symphonic black metal, pretty much a black metal inspired by Therion, let's say, Antumbra from Romania, on their latest release called Oblivion, pretty much uses some black metal derivations and places everything into a pretty original dark metal ethereal style. Now, we are a couple of hours away from the official launch of the Oblivion material, which is scheduled for the 10th of September this year, and by courtesy of Loud Rage Music we managed to get this material in ahead of auction that is before the official launch, so we can review it because we have a very nice collaboration with Loud Rage Music, and also because some labels such as Loud Rage still understand the value of reviews, probably somehow in the vein of what Virginia Woolf said, that nothing really happened until it has been described. So if the real happening of something has to do with the description of that something, we will describe this latest Oblivion material by Antumbra from Sibiu. Oblivion, in my opinion, it is an album that tries to take a couple of pictures of the end times of human sociability, but it doesn't do it in a sad or in a depressing style, because actually Oblivion is full of unexpected hope, full of affiliated and strongly centralized feelings, and full of a form of compelling self-appreciation. Not at all a depressing material. And as a key word to describe this material, I would say it is a very helpful material, in the sense that Oblivion uses in a generous way the dark helping of misanthropy, and it uses the greedy fingers of darkness, the kind of greedy fingers of darkness that we could perhaps best see in the series of Twin Peaks, the kind of greedy fingers of darkness that would leave bruises on the breasts of young girls. And it pretty much uses these greedy fingers of darkness in order to heal and to seal wounds and scars. More specifically said, if you know how to tolerate loneliness, that loneliness will bring you many satisfactions. Many satisfactions, I mean a coldly clear precision when it comes to knowing your limits, and so as for you to be able to better work with yourself, with your almost sexual fragility. I would say it like this. So cognitive dissonance in here is not turned by the band into a hell mode, but into a heal mode. And basically this means that the musician uses some very subtle intensifications of insecurity and adversity in order to grasp that redeeming elegance of insecurity and of adversity that is in order to learn how to work with that almost sexual fragility of human beings. And by doing so, the final result in here is a shareable quality of agony, where the melodic passages are backed by some gently frosty distortions executed with a very cold flair by the musician. So If we are to go a little bit into the area of poetry, I could say that listening to this kind of music is like listening to the pleasant swish and whispering of a mysterious mistiness that probes the darkness with a tentacle that is sure but at the same time cautious, a tentacle that is submissive but not unpretentious, and a tentacle that is malleable but not stupid. And this being a very poetic construction that I use in order to describe the material, perhaps a Romanian translation here would be necessary as well. So, in Romanian, it goes like this. A asculta această muzică este ca și cum ai asculta fâșâitul plăcut al unei pâcle misterioase care scrutează întunericul cu un tentacul. Un tentacul sigur, de în același timp foarte precaut. Un tentacul supus, dar nu lipsit de pretenții. Un tentacul maleabil, dar nu prost. This is how the poetic construction would go in Romanian. So, basically, you can feel a pleasant, moderate fire burning all along the tracks. Tracks which use subtle changes to keep the things interesting and progressing. Oblivion is, by all means, not a black metal release. It is a dark metal release, but a dark metal release that is beautifully rooted in some distant and evasive black metal undercurrents. But even so, even if it is a dark metal rooted in distant and evasive black metal undercurrents, Oblivion is not at all a lifeless take on Darkthrone or on Nargaroth, for instance. And what this album, or compilation as the artist wanted to call this release, what this album does is to take some melodic and strangely atmospheric and strangely resonant passages from Nargaroth and from Aaskereia, passages which pretty much only make sense and have real flavor in a black metalish or black metal metalized surrounding proto-plasma. So it takes this kind of strangely atmospheric and strangely resonant passages from Nargaroth and Aaskereia, and it further develops them into a Throes of Dawn style. Throes of Dawn being a band from Finland with Quicksilver Clouds. A great release. People could also see them in at the Dark Bombastic Evening in Alba Iulia, quite a memorable show. And as I said, from a stylistic point of view, this is what happens on Oblivion, taking some strangely resonant passages from Nargaroth and from Aaskereia and further developing those passages into a Finnish Throes of Dawn Quicksilver Clouds style. The idea is that you pretty much have to take all those passages from a black metal environment, because those strangely resonant passages only have meaning when they are being processed in a black metal fertile soil and pulsating protoplasmic environment. So it takes these passages from Nargaroth and Aaskereia and develops them into the style of Throes of Dawn, especially the style of Throes of Dawn used on Quicksilver Clouds. What does it mean? What does it really mean? Because these kind of things are a little bit hard to explain. It means that the band is working with very few but also very clear, deep and beautifully crafted layers. Once again, very few but also very clear, deep and very beautifully crafted layers. Layers of psychedelic dark, maybe a little bit doom metal. Layers of psychedelic dark doom metal. And pretty much uses this kind of layers as some infusions into the music, because here every cut is clean, very clean cuts, and absolutely no fat or diluted feelings are brought to the table. And basically the result of this kind of an approach is a very pleasant and palatable. Palatable means pleasant to the taste. A very pleasant and palatable clarity of emotions, while still preserving some sort of an obscure malevolence. This kind of obscure malevolence having to do mostly with a remote and distant narcissistic mysticism, or with a minimalist and ethereal occult devotion. So what Antumbra offers in here is a quasi-enigmatic grandeur of weightlessness. This is the kind of album that will not and cannot collapse under its own weight, because the weight and the heaviness is very elegantly distributed all along the tracks. What I personally particularly liked on this material are the interplays, and I can say that the interplays sound almost danceable. So this is pretty much the kind of music on which the goth girls could dance on, although they would dance distantly and coldly domineering type of dance. And the interplays here are always subtle and naturally interlaced, without ever overstaying their welcome. And what they actually do within the general algorithm of the album is to create an album where there is hardly a pause, or where one can hardly find a stationary moment. Very dynamic in its flow. And all these interplays would ingrain themselves into the most fundamental features of the band's sound. Because these interplays have a very powerful sound without being aggressive, and they remain distant but somehow very deep. Also distant but somehow also very deep, oxymoronically speaking. The band shows that you can add more depth by adding more distance. So this is what happens in here. The band adds more and more depth and goes deeper and deeper by strangely adding more distance. So it's strange to approach things in such a way, but it's an oxymoron that actually works in here. And also because of this way of adding depth by means of distances, because of this very technique of adding depth by means of distances, perhaps this is also the very reason for which the band manages to carve its own niche into the black metal inspired psychedelic dark metal. And pretty much the band manages to be in a league of its own. And the Oblivion album or compilation is pretty much an example of a sound that perhaps hasn't been explored that much. A sound full of distance and intangible magical factors. Distance and intangible magical factors in the sense that on this release the feelings do not really show themselves, and this is a very important aspect to describe these materials. Yes, it's full of distant feelings, of distant atmospheres, of distant emotions, of intangible moments of magic, but these kind of things do not really show their real faces, and the musician does not really show his feelings, pretty much behaving in the vein of the title of the band, which is Antumbra, meaning that a place where things are not what they seem to be. And in this sense, the songs deliver an eerie and almost stoic image of cold distancing. The cold distancing that you feel when the beloved girl or when the beloved moments are far away. And the album describes the impact of this distance, the impact of this distance and the impact of these acts of distancing on those decisive and compelling moments of one's experience and of one's existence. And we are talking here about subtle moments whose importance otherwise could have been easily overlooked. And pretty much basically the whole album begs to be a different breed of black metal. A different breed of black metal constructed around one single main obsessive idea and ambition of the musician, which is, in my opinion, and here I will try to quote what I think the artist thought, in the end you will see yourself as I see you, or in the end you will see yourself in the light in which I am seeing you right now. The voice here has a particular nerve to it. That is, the voice is both reserved and prominent at the same time, and basically the voice is talking about how a person gets somehow inexplicably changed for the better when that person realizes how powerful isolation can be, how much power you can gain from isolation. And the voice is an insightful, personal, and pleasantly misanthropic and pleasantly disturbing kind of or type of voice. And the intonation used is 100% bound to introspection. And very interesting, very interesting regarding the voice, there are echo effects, distortions, and even some reverbs that are added to the voice in the same manner in which echoes, distortions and reverbs are normally added to the guitars, but everything is done in a very subtle and elegant manner. And basically the voice also reflects a very good lyrical focus, in the sense that it helps the lyrics be much clearer and convey their message in a more direct way. And the message that can be seen in the special timbre of the voice is that evil and satanic things are already here, but we are strong enough to face them by means of our reflexive acuity and good and refined taste, and also by means of our mature reinforcing resolutions. Now, interesting enough, not only at the level of the voice, but as a general aura for the whole album, here nothing is dramatic or histrionic in any way. So no histrionic motifs or no dramatic motifs are being used in here in any way, and instead of trying to gain an addictive quality to the sound by means of using dramatic or histrionic tools, the band uses entrancing and hypnotic powers, the entrancing and the hypnotic powers of the deeply reinforcing existential resolutions. So not at all a sad or depressing album, on the contrary, actually a very positive experience, and some very positive and strong, though evasive, though distant, but still strong and positive emotions and a strong and positive experience. Now, as far as the guitars are being concerned, if you listen to the song alone, which also has a video, I could say that the weeping or the crying guitar, as it appears, for example, on the song alone and on many other songs, weeping and crying in a stylish, reserved and elegant manner, seem to be the best element that Antumbra has to offer, or that Antumbra has to bring to the table. But it is noticeable that such guitars start and also bookend every song and remain basically the guiding entity or the guiding light, to quote a famous series on this album. And the guitars will always reproduce the vibrations and the electric waves of the consciousness in some gently spiked distortions that make you think of the morning star. And both the guitars and the drums are, as I said in the beginning, derivative of black metal. Yes, derivative in a very good and elegant sense. That is, they are trying to deliver through derivations the perfect amount of everything that has to do with distant nostalgia in black metal. And acoustically speaking, there is even a Bukovina influence in here. For instance, when I first heard the song Malevolent, I thought I made a mistake and I put the Bukovina CD in the CD player instead of the Antumbra CD. Even Bukovina influences as far as the acoustic sections are concerned. As for the drums, although you will not hear the snare of the drums in the fast parts, the drums here are also capable of a lot of subtle variations that really keep the listener imperceptibly fixated on each song, as the drums, they never take attention away from the riffing, but rather complement the riffs nicely with deeply ingrained and arresting receptacles or pockets. And they are performed in such a way that they do not they do not put into danger the metallic fundament of the album, but they keep it very healthy and subtly fresh instead. Now, enough with the pleasantries. We highlighted the good aspects of this release. Now, let's go a little bit on the negative side as well. And when I say negative with or without inverted commas, what I mean is that what else could have been added to this release? What more is needed in here? As I previously said, the velocity here is of minor technical relevance, but not of minor aesthetical relevance. So the velocity manages to maintain a marginal node to some exotic Bethlehem, Nargaroth, Aaskereia or silencer influences. But still, I would say that more morbid metal of the old days is needed in here. And what I mean by this is that you, as an artist, need to find some ways to bring more aggression and heaviness into the songs while remaining perfectly loyal to your sound, to your niche and to your subgenre, because the tracks somehow stop just before picking up more steam, and the album is a little bit, as I said, too loyal and too stuck into its subgenre. I understand you do not want to get out of the genre, you do not want to ruin the general atmosphere of the album, but even so, as an artist, you need to find ways to make it more fast and more aggressive while remaining into that very niche or into that very genre that you carved or that you crafted for yourself. And to give just an example, the sad, clean guitar arpeggio does really require an aggressive, triumphant and fast closure. Perhaps this is an essential feature of black metal. So if you want to call yourself a black metal band, then when you use acoustic passages, you also need to somehow bring them into a state of aggressive elevation, okay, aggressive and triumphant closure for acoustic segments. If in here we are dealing with an artist that is very talented and very original as far as musical expressions go, there are a couple of flaws that luckily for him they have to do with the presentation of the project, and not so much with the music. That is, they do not have a real direct impact on the music, but perhaps some minuses may have an impact on the reception of the music by the listeners. And all these kind of minuses don't really appear in here. This is a CD that is a beautiful musical experience. You can really spend money on it and put it in your library, because you will not regret it for a second. It deserves all the money in your pockets, and you will listen to it, I don't know how often, but for sure you will come back to it, because it really deserves buying it, and it really deserves having it as a beautiful artifact in your library. But what I want to say is that there are some minuses into the presentation of the project. All these minuses appearing mostly on the website of the band, which could perhaps affect in some degree the perception of the band. And please do not get me wrong in this regard, because while most of the bands nowadays for promotional purposes rely only on Facebook, Instagram or Bandcamp, it is very impressive to also have a site and to take the time and construct a site for yourself. And we are not talking about just any kind of site, but actually about a person who is very versatile and even talented into the aesthetics of websites and into front-end development. But in order for the things to be really okay, you kind of need to be a little bit careful with the type of information that you put in there. And I will give a few examples from the site. And pretty much all of them have to do with the way in which the artist describes the music of Antumbra. And he says that this kind of music, it captures the essence of black metal while evoking a sense of mystery and introspection. Now, it captures the essence of black metal. No, really. I mean, people who are bigger than us, have more years than we do in here, they cannot claim that they capture the essence of black metal, okay? And if we are to continue the string of terms with umbra, penumbra and antumbra, then perhaps when you write such a thing that your band captures the essence of black metal, you should explain what the essence of black metal is, what is the quintessence of black metal, and what are the, let's say, non-essential aspects of black metal. So umbra, penumbra, antumbra, essence, quintessence, and non-essential aspects of black metal. If you want at all costs to claim that you can access the essence of black metal, then you need to choose your words very carefully and also deliver some very original and compelling arguments. You cannot just put something like this on the website. Also, there is a little bit problematic when he says that when he describes the word that he used to title his band, namely Antumbra. Basically, he kind of takes the technical definition of the term, Antumbra being a type of shadow, just like penumbra, and like the normal shadow that has to do with the shadows as being casted by celestial bodies, and it pretty much designates a certain region of that shadowy world. And he says that things are not what they seem to be. Honestly, I wouldn't do it like this. I would try a more personal explanation, and I would try to describe the special meaning of this Antumbra region that made me as an artist name the band in this way, not just give a technical explanation that you can find in any dictionary or Wikipedia or whatever. No, here you kind of need to better explain the term and the reasons why the term was brought into the very name of the band. This is something that perhaps should be done in an interview, should the artist want to come to an interview after this review. Hopefully he will. And something else on this website, let me just look for it. Something that really annoyed me, and it says there, he gives the reasons why he only releases, or he only released up to this point albums in digital format. And he says, why only digital? Because we are living in a digital era. Now this is something very disturbing for me to read. How should I try to explain the error in here? We are not living in a digital era. We never have, and we never will live in a digital era. We have always lived, we are living, and we will always live in reality. And reality is made of physical objects. We do not have digital hands. We have hands made of bones, flesh, skin, and blood. And this is a huge misunderstanding with the digital era, because the people who coined the term, or who brought the first theories on the digital era, such as Marshall McLuhan, and it's a whole bibliography in there, they never claimed that the digital era is here for us to replace the physical objects with digital objects. This was never ever the point. The point of the digital era was to have more information available, more virtual environments where to test our scenarios. So we can have this virtual testing environment where we can test scenarios after scenarios and after scenarios. Why do we need to do all this testing into the digital and virtual world? In order to be able to deliver better physical products, but by no means to replace the physical artifacts with digital artifacts. And why did those people said this? The ones that brought the first theories on the digital era, because they were people who are highly preoccupied with education, with teaching, with methodology. Yeah, so let's say you have a kid and you want to teach him about music, or you have the next generation that need to be taught about music. How are you going to teach them if you put everything on a USB stick or an external hardware? No, you cannot do it like this. You can put 10,000 albums on those storage environments, but still the real power is in the real artifacts. And for this reason, I consider this physical artifact being the first album and the birth as such of Antumbra. All the other things that were released digitally are, for me personally, only manuscripts. But this is the real book. What if authors would stop publishing books on paper and would give only digital books? It would be probably one step further towards the end of culture. Digital products are there to complement and to prepare better physical objects, but not to replace physical objects. Okay? Indeed, I call to the interviews people who only released albums in digital forms, but I don't do it in order to say that it's okay to release in digital form. No, I call those people to the interviews and I try to help them not to sanction in any way the digital productions, but to encourage them to release in the end physical artifacts. So yes, we need to take interviews with people who release materials only in digital forms, but not to say it's okay to leave those musical tracks digitally, but to encourage them at a certain point in their future career to come up with a physical product as well, because this has bone, skin, flesh and blood. And by the way, it is also a very beautifully crafted booklet with lyrics, and also with this high aesthetic talent that the artist has. So once again, a highly collectible and a highly recommendable also from a musical point of view release. This is something that pretty much worth all your money to buy it. Beautifully brought to the market by Loud Rage Music. And generally speaking, Loud Rage Music is a blessing for the Romanian underground metal scene, because it has always set the Romanian bands on a righteous and right track. And one more minus, I would say, of this release has to do with the cover. This is a great cover done by a person with high aesthetic skills, but it could have been even a greater cover. What kind of bothers me is the use of the clock in here, because the artist says that he talks in his music about the irreversible passage of time, about the destructive influence of time upon human actions, upon human mentality, upon human psychological traits. And by doing so, you put a clock in here. Now, I don't understand why, because I find this kind of attitude, and it's not only the case in here, it's the case with many other bands who talk about time and put clocks on their covers, or hourglasses and so on and so forth. And my question in here is, why use a stereotype? Why use a cliche such as a clock? Why can't you come up with a more powerful image, with a more original image to suggest time? Why not use a metaphor or an allegory of time? Why use this clock stereotype? I understand that Sibiu is a city full of clocks, and you grow up in Sibiu with a culture of medieval clocks, but still, when representing time, musicians should be more creative, because if you can be very creative in your music and highly original in your music, why can't you do the same thing with a cover? And I'm a person who really appreciates covers, because I understand that the cover sets the whole horizon of expectation for an album. For example, Sepultura's Chaos AD was sold by the cover. And the way I listen to the release, I don't even feel that the real subject of Oblivion is time. I think that the real subject of Oblivion is the distancing from itself of the human consciousness, and the way in which human consciousness, while distancing from itself, can absorb time as distance. So perhaps a better idea would have been a representation of the human consciousness in a picture or in a painting instead of a clock. That would have had a more powerful imprint and would have used a more powerful trigger into the world of the music inside the CD. As some viewers have asked me to give a mark and also to stress the... No, not the viewers, the artist himself put on the website the question, we are talking about the website, what is your favorite song? Now, my favorite song from Oblivion is the 5th song called Frozen. I think it's so far is the best Antumbra song, although Alone is a very great song, and many other great songs such as When the Rivers Meet the Sea and many other great songs, but somehow Frozen is having an element that other songs do not have. Pretty much Frozen sounds like an incantation. And as a final mark, I would say a decent, solid 8.5, maybe even a 9. Once again the international recommendation: if you like those eerie, strangely resonant and nostalgic passages from Nargaroth, from Aaskereia, even from Bethlehem or Silencer, passages that are cooked and boiled into a black metal protoplasmic environment and then brought into a dark metal finish trend such as that of Throes of Dawn, then you will surely like Antumbra's Oblivion. Less than 40 hours until the official release of the material. I consider it to be the, as I said, the birth of Antumbra on the international metal scene. Beautifully crafted album, no pauses, no boring moment, pretty much compelling atmosphere and something very helpful and healing, not at all depressed and not at all sad in any way release, but a release full of hope and full of affiliated centralized feelings and strengthened human psyche by means of correctly absorbed distances. The way in which the distances are correctly absorbed into the human consciousness is the real subject of this one, and not so much time. So 8.5, maybe 9. Beautiful release by Outrage Music at the beginning of this September. Thank you so much.